Welcome, it's Amelia Andaleon with Spiritually Fit Yoga. It's been a while since I've been here. I took a vacation up to Washington State. To those of you that have been following me for a while, you've heard that I'm from Port Angeles, Washington, this small town. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area now. This is where I'm talking to you from now. When I go home, whenever I can, I am outside in nature. And especially if I have more time, I am going out backpacking with my girlfriends. So again, if you've heard and you've been with me, I turned 60 in December, and I have decided, and actually I've decided this ever since I turned 50, that I'm going to have birthday years. So pretty much every day is your birthday. When you decide to have a birthday year, right? There's something about the milestone birthdays, 50, 60, when I get to 70, all of those years, that I really want to give myself permission to keep celebrating, which means for me, doing what I love, and like looking at my bucket list and seeing, is there something else that I still want to check off my bucket list? So one of the things I love to do is go backpacking with my girlfriends. And because I'm a December baby, I typically will go in August. I have a lot of friends that are teachers though, so we've been going around July and August. So this year we went in August, and that was in honor of my 60th birthday. Also in honor of some friends who were just turning 50s or just in their 50s, and another one of my best friends who were almost exactly 10 years apart. She's turning 70 next month. So we tend to celebrate, if we can, we try to celebrate together, going backpacking or hiking. I originally wanted to go to the high country. There's a particular area called Seven Lakes Basin, and going up to Heart Lake, going up and over this pass. So that's one of the places. But those permits go so fast. By the time my friend Barb, went out to try to get permits for us, for our group, they were already gone. And we were like right on it. So it's just like, that's kind of an interesting thing. Way back when I used to camp and backpack and it wasn't hard, you didn't have to get all these permits. That's how long I've been doing this. But now you kind of have to get right on it. And for Washington State, and I think for most places up there, like Olympic National Park, you have to put in for your permits. I think it's is it April 15th? It might be on April 15th on tax day. I'm not sure, but you have to get it early, but you can't do it too much earlier. So even though we had these dates planned in January, we still had to wait to get our permits. So we couldn't get what we wanted in the high country. We did get permits for some place called Toliak Point. So it's Toleak. And one, it was available. And two, I was thinking about it and I thought it'd be fun. I haven't done that route in about 30 years. And the girlfriends that were going to go with me this time, they had been there, but we hadn't all been together. So this group of girlfriends that I go backpacking with, we've been backpacking together for 20, 30 years. And a lot of us have been backpacking for about 40 years or more. Maybe not together, but together we've been around 20 or 30 years that we've been backpacking together. So all of us are pretty seasoned. Several of us have been backpacking guides or are still backpacking guides, in addition to having professional jobs. I've got a friend who's a lawyer, another friend who is a professor, a friend that's she works in research now, but she used to be a park ranger in this place, this Toliak Point, where we went backpacking, teachers, just a variety of professions. Some are retired now because that's where we are in our lives, or we're in our second chapter, which is what I think of when I'm in my yoga chapter right now, my yoga career, because this came after my corporate job, after staying at home a little bit with my daughter, and then adding yoga on the side, something to do, because I had a hard time just being a stay-at-home mom. That didn't work well for my personality. And then now it's just blossomed into this next career that I'm in. So we went to Toliak Point, and I remember thinking about it fondly when I went with my girlfriends. At the time, I thought it was just fun because we had to climb up these ladders, and I didn't remember how many sets of ladders, but it's about like 6 sets of ladders, maybe 6 or 7. There's a set of ladders, there's ropes. Because we're in Toliak Point, it's actually a coastal hike. And because we have to work around the tides, the ocean coming in and out, we need to go up and over. So it's like overland hikes. Even if we timed it for the lowest tides, And we didn't have super low tide. We had like a 1 foot tide. That's not super low. Like your super low is like when we're getting more like -1. And those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, it's okay. Those of you that know what I'm talking about tides, you know what I mean. It's good to know those tides if you want to go like tide pooling or something. That's helpful. Or if you're like walking around a point, and then that's where the ocean comes in. People get stuck there if they don't check these tides. So if you're ever hiking or around on the coast, around any points, check the tide tables. That's one tip I'll give you, because sometimes people have to get rescued. So just a little FYI for you. All right, so you have to do the ups and overs. Super fun. And as we're climbing up it, and all of us, it's like it's been a while since we'd done this particular route. It was harder than we remember. As much as I remembered it being super fun, and we're in pretty decent condition, but I pretty much have been conditioning doing yoga and hiking. And I hadn't been really lifting weights or doing anything specific for backpacking, because I've done it so long, it's in my body, and if I get tired, I just slow down and take a break. So that's kind of where I am with my backpacking. And going on these ladders and ropes, you're wearing a backpack, you're carrying your gear, and we're all probably carrying, and not super heavy because it was only a 3-night backpack. It wasn't that long. So maybe we were carrying like maybe 40 pounds or something like that, because we had to carry water, food, tent. We would split up, like maybe somebody would have the poles and somebody would have the actual tent fly and etc. So that's what you do when you're backpacking in a group and you're sharing equipment. You don't want to bring more than you need to. So anyways, so you want to make sure that the backpack is like fits you really well, because these ropes, I mean, you're not exactly vertical, but there's a little bit of an angle. There are some pitches that seem like they're really steep, but you're holding on. We were wearing our gloves. We remembered from before to bring you can bring some cheap gardening gloves, or maybe old weightlifting gloves, just something to protect you from these ropes. We're not clipped in, so it was up to us to just have our steady footing walking on these wood slats. And then maybe there'd be a rope at the same time, or maybe it was just a rope. So one thing that I noticed that was actually easier and safer is that they've added the ladders and the ropes. So there were sections before that was just the ropes. If you go to Mount Storm King above Lake Crescent, so that's become pretty popular on Instagram, for example, that's just ropes. There's no ladder. There's no wooden slats to go up. So it's just, but they have some rocky parts. So you can kind of, get your footing, but it can be like dirt and can slip. Anyways, we had ladders and ropes, and it was fun. It was fun. The other thing that I realized was when everybody was talking about bringing their walking sticks, their walking poles, and they said, "Do you want to bring one?" And it's just like, "Oh no, I don't need it. It's fine." Which is, I haven't needed to use them in a long time. I didn't remember how steep it would be, and remembering like carrying a backpack, and like how just having just like that extra help by putting the pole in the ground can kind of just help you go up, or also just steady on the way down. Sometimes on the way downhill, it can be a little bit better. Also, it can be a little bit harder. So that's where the walking poles can be handy. So I didn't have my walking poles. So what that meant was, as I was walking up and I was walking down, I was really using my core, and I was really tightening up my thighs, and I was really watching my footing, making sure to sit back in my heels as I was going downhill. Yep, as I was going downhill, because you don't want to lean forward like into gravity. You want to lean back a little bit. Same thing if you're on the edge of a cliff. You always want to like kind of err on leaning away from the cliff, not on the edge of where there might be a cliff or a drop off. So keeping that in mind. And as I was going, I was like, wow, I think I'm going to really feel this. I'm going to feel this in my thighs and everything. The most important thing that we all wanted to make sure was that we were safe. And it's so funny because several of us kept saying, it's just like, has anybody ever died doing this trip? Because if I lost, let's say, grip on the rope or somehow slipped, my foot slipped on a ladder. I mean, I could have just fallen, especially if I didn't have a tight backpack. If I didn't have it, get a good backpack. If you ever want to go backpacking, get a backpack that fits you. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go somewhere like REI and have them like fit you in a backpack. And same thing with your hiking boots. You don't want to get brand new hiking boots. You don't want to get the blisters and all of that. Bring your moleskin. Those of you that are backpackers, you know what I'm talking about. Those of that you are not, take it seriously to take care of all of these things, to prepare ahead of time. Okay, so we do this, and it's amazing. So we go, and then I'm looking at my friends, and they've got their walking poles. I don't have my walking pole. I don't have a walking stick. And then finally we come up and over one of the headlands, and then we go down to a beach where we're going to take a little bit of a break. And we check the tide tables. It's like, okay, so we actually have a window. We actually had a 30-minute window that the tide was going to go out. So instead of having to do another up and over, we had the chance to walk around the point. So we switched actually from our hiking boots into our water shoes, into our chacos, so we could walk in the water. And it turned out that it was so shallow that I could have walked. I had waterproof hiking boots, so I could have just walked through the water, but it actually felt kind of good to actually stand in the water, have the cool water, the cool ocean water on my feet and my sandals. And while we were waiting there, we had our water break. We had a place to filter water. We had our snacks. I had my snacks, so it was a great place to refuel. Got a place that we could get some shade. And then because we were at a beach, there was all this driftwood. So I walked around, and I took part of my time on break was to find a walking stick. And fortunately, I found a walking stick that worked perfectly. And then as I was walking, and especially when we went around the point, then we had to go back up again. Going up the ladders and the ropes, we would secure our walking sticks and our walking poles to attach it to our backpack because we needed both hands to climb up. So I was able to do that with this wooden walking stick. And as I got up to the top and back up on land off the ladders, pulled out my walking stick, we're starting to have to go up again. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much easier. Just having one walking stick. Several of my friends, they had two. So it almost feels like you are, like cross country skiing. You're able to use a little bit more of your body to help you on these hikes or on these trails. So a couple tips you've heard me say. One, prepare ahead of time. Check especially if you're going to be going on a coastal hike, check the tide tables, look at that, look at your route, look at your map. Don't depend on your iPhone map. Don't depend on all trails. Get a paper map. Because what happens if you, one, run out of battery, which happened to almost everybody on my trip, and not everybody brought chargers to charge their phones. Two, you probably, depending on how remote you are hiking or backpacking, are going to lose signal. So you're not going to have any internet. So those two things. So know your route and have a piece of paper, print it, or get a map for that area and learn how to read a map. So that's one thing. We did have somebody that had a GPS. So we had that. We could make an emergency call. Like I said, this was a very seasoned group of backpackers that I had. But a lot of people don't have those GPS devices. And quick tangent, living in Port Angeles, we've heard people, tourists come in and they go backpacking. They pack their GPS and then they don't plan ahead for not having a signal, and they should have GPS signal everywhere, especially with the satellites. Or somehow, the battery died and they did not bring a charger, all of that. And then people get lost. They get disoriented because, let's say, the fog comes in. So all of a sudden their landmarks are gone. They no longer can see the sun. And sometimes that can tell you north, south, east, west. They no longer can see any of the mountain peaks. They no longer can tell where's the ocean compared to, the mountain peaks behind me. And any of those landmarks, all of a sudden, it's like you're flying blind when you are like in those valleys, when you're deep backpacking. So just know your route. Just take care of that if you're really going to be going into the wilderness. And bring your walking sticks. It's okay. Bring your walking sticks, even if you don't think you're going to need them. They have these great collapsible walking sticks. The first time I started using walking sticks was when I was backpacking in Italy, and this was in 1993. I was backpacking with my girlfriends. These Germans, we were in the Dolomites, so in Italy. So these are the Italian Alps. We were doing something called Alta Via 1. And these Germans walked up to us, or walked up to me specifically, and they said, "Where are your walking stocks?" And I didn't know what they were saying. Walking stocks? What are walking stocks? And then they held up in their hand, they showed me, the walking. It's like, where, because we were doing a hike, like a steep incline, like up and down, and on top of that, the surface of our trail that we were standing on or walking on was shale, and shale is loose rock, basically. So it was pretty dicey. So I was doing a lot of the switchbacking, just going side to side this way instead of straight up or straight down. So that's one way also that you can create a little bit of a brace with your legs and your footing to prevent you from falling. All right, so this nice German, he asked me about my walking stocks, and it's like, I don't have any walking stocks. So he said, "Here, take my one." So he had two, and he gave me one. And I used that thing the whole time. We went to a place called Refugio Lagozoi. I know I'm going off on a tangent. And we stayed up there for a couple of nights, which is, oh my gosh, that was amazing. The Dolomites, the Italian Dolomites, that's one of my favorite places. I actually went back a second time with my husband. The first time was with my girlfriends. The second time I took my husband as part of our honeymoon because I want to take him there. I want to go back and bring my daughter. But I also am researching places to lead a yoga retreat up there. So if anybody listening happens to be in Italy, or you know of a place that would be great to have to host a yoga retreat, to be a nice home base, to be in the Dolomites, let me know. I have some places in mind already, but just throw that out there. So the walking sticks, they help a lot. So if you can find at the bottom of this Refugio Lagozoi, right at the bottom was Cortina de Ampezzo, which is where the Olympics were in Italy. So they're in the Dolomites, Cortina de Ampezzo. You can look that up. I went to a sporting goods store, and there they had these walking sticks back in 1993. I don't remember them being the telescoping, the shrinking walking sticks that you can just like make really small and so easy to put into your backpack, even a day pack. So this was a full size one, which is totally fine. I got them for like $40 at the time. Even then, they didn't seem that expensive. Maybe it was even less. Maybe it was $20 for each one. So I got them for $40, and I used those, like, I don't know, for a long time until I converted over to the telescoping walking sticks. All right, so we kept going. We kept going on this backpack trip. We finally get to Toliak Point, where we had choices to pitch our tents. And so we had 3 tents for the 6 of us. We put our backpacks down. We had somebody kind of scout out some of the sites. There were several that were still available by the time we got there. And we picked this beautiful site that was actually under the trees. And it was like the sand was right in front of us, but we had enough distance away from the water that we were nowhere close to having to worry about high tide coming up. We were totally fine up there. And so we would have a view of the sunset, the wildlife that was out there. We were very, very close to tide pooling in the mornings. The sunsets were great. And something that I've noticed, and I'm still researching, any of you that are California backpackers, maybe you can let me know where better places are to backpack. But in Washington, backpacking sites that I'm used to, the camping sites that I'm used to, they have a lot of space. They're really roomy, and you are like between you and your neighbor, there's a lot of space. So it's not dense. It doesn't feel like you're right on top of each other. And doesn't seem like you can hear your neighbor snoring because their tents are so close to you. So we were there, and it's like we had our 3 tents that we could spread out at this beautiful site. And, they have a built-in kitchen, which means they had a little shelf. It was very obvious where you could put like your stove, your cook stove. They did have a little fire pit. There was a ban on fires in Olympic National Park because of the high fire danger. However, at the coast, they were letting us build fires to cook. So we actually didn't even do that because we had our cooking stoves. How much more do you want to hear? So we were there for a couple of nights and it was just magical. So I'll wrap this up for you and maybe I'll share part two. Let me know if you want to hear more. I put on Instagram a video of part one. I have so many videos and pictures, and I let my phone like just die. I didn't even charge it. So between all of us, we took photos and videos, but it was actually really, really lovely being totally unplugged for a couple of days and not even taking pictures. Next time I think I'll bring a camera and not depend on my iPhone to be a camera. So to wrap this up, at the end, what I realized was that it was such a blessing to have this group of women who have been sharing the outdoors in this very wild, raw way. And we had a conversation about, wow, we're still doing this. And we're kind of patting ourselves on the back that how good we are at backpacking. And it's because we've done it a lot. And I talked a little bit about this during one of my yoga classes, and I maybe even blogged about it a little bit. That is just like anything in life, just like any yoga posture, that repetition is the queen of mastery. And I didn't take backpacking classes. I didn't get a backpacking certification. I just had a lot of experience and I started it at a very young age because I lived in a small town where there were no malls. Our form of recreation was the outdoors. And if you didn't do the outdoors, I don't know what else you were doing. But there wasn't a whole lot to do in my little town because we were at the foot of Olympic National Park. So I was kind of forced to go, not forced, but in terms of my options, it's like, well, if I want to do something and my friends, they happen to also be outdoorsy, that's what we did. These particular friends that I went backpacking with, they were not my high school friends. Only one happened to go to the same high school as me. And I think she's the only one that grew up in Port Angeles. And we didn't even know each other in high school. So because we were 2 years apart, everybody else was from different areas. But just moving back and getting that introduction to backpacking when I think the first time I went backpacking, I was 15 years old, was the first time, and not with my parents. My parents have never been backpacking. I have Filipino family, and I've been finding out there's actually a lot of Filipinos that are actually very outdoorsy and into backpacking that I've been following them that are in the Philippines. But in my family, my Filipino family, they thought I was crazy. A woman going out into the wilderness, like where there could be all these dangers. I mean, that's how they viewed backpacking. They thought I was crazy. But because I started young and I was influenced by friends who did come from backpacking families and had this, it's kind of like this passed down knowledge. We didn't go to backpacking schools back at the time. You could go to something called Outward Bound. Maybe you've heard of that, where people would go to learn like survival skills, but it was really about developing self-esteem and just what do you experience when you are away from everything, and how do you take care of yourself out in the wild. It's pretty wild, like having that experience. But all of us having that experience at a young age, we realize we can probably keep doing this as long as our bodies will allow us to. And even though we were really sore after this because we hadn't necessarily been conditioning for the ropes and the ladders and the steeps and the up and down and carrying our backpacks as heavy as they were, when you do anything, especially if you started at a young age, you keep that muscle memory. It's like your body will remember. Like, my friend Barb, she's a swimmer and she swam ever since she was a little kid. She jumps into the lake and she just looks like a fish. My sister-in-law, Barb, also, she's a swimmer. I mean, I feel like she could swim across the lake and she's 75 and she did it ever since she was a kid. And just think about anything that you have done that you started as a kid. It's just like riding a bike again, right? Getting back on the bike. So I tell my daughter, I tell other people, it's like, if you want to have this type of sense of longevity or some type of an anti-aging effect just on your body, like physically in your body. Start as young as you can. Start whenever, whether even like I started teaching yoga at 45. That's when I went to yoga teacher training. I'm 60 now. So start at any time, and then when you do it, repeat it. Like, have some consistency. If you want to, you can go find somebody to train you. You can go. I know I've led women's backpacking trips to teach people how to, how do you set up a tent? How do you filter water? I mean, there's definitely, what is it called? Back roads, like going on the back roads on your bike. And you have support systems and sag vans or sag wagons. There's a lot of ways that you can learn how to do this. And you don't have to do it all on your own. Just like when I went to Nepal, in the Himalayas, I went backpacking and I had Sherpas that were helping me carry gear, helping me carry cooking equipment, the fuel, because we were out for 21 days. So you don't always have to carry everything on your own, do everything on your own. You can definitely bring a support system and get the experience of being in the outdoors and getting out away from everything and really unplugging. If you've never experienced it before, I'm not going to promise that you're going to feel this way, but there is definitely a calming of the nervous system. And the reason I don't want to promise this for everybody, because I know if you are brand new to this and you're a city person, you don't like bugs, you don't like to experience anything like that, you might go and you might be saying that you hate it the whole time. I had a friend that she was so fascinated that I backpacked. She's like, oh, I want to go. Just like, okay, well, let's talk about it. So I started telling her what we needed to do to prepare if she really wanted to go. And she's like, so where do I plug in my curling iron? How do I take a shower? How do blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, we're not going to have any electricity. There are no showers. Now, okay, I'm gonna digress again. If you do something like the Altavia one in the Alps, and you can find places like this in the United States. So that was a mountain hut to hut. You go from refugio to refugio, and that is like heaven. So you go backpacking, but I didn't need my tent. I didn't need my sleeping bag. I didn't need my any of that stuff. I did bring a sleeping bag because I just feel safer bringing a sleeping bag. But you can go to these huts and you have a bed. It's like booking a hotel room. So, and these beds in these refugios in Italy, they were like feather beds. And maybe it feels more like comfortable because we've been backpacking. We're still doing the backpacking. We're still doing all the hard work. But you get there, you take your backpack off. There's a shower with hot water. There's a bed that you can lay on. You don't have to pitch a tent. And then you go out into the restaurant area where it typically is like a communal dining area with maybe a lot of tables and benches, or maybe there's separate big tables, so communal eating. And you can get the best Italian food. And if you drink, I mean, they have wine. I remember in Italy, everybody's like, the wine is like, it's cheap, but it's like the house wine. It doesn't have the preservatives. And sometimes we'll get here in the States when they're importing the wine. Anyways, there's also that way to backpack. So you might enjoy that type of backpacking to kind of ease into it instead of doing the total wilderness backpacking experience. So back to my recommendation and suggestion. And I'm probably speaking more to the younger people and those of you that are parents, maybe giving that message to anybody that's younger. I remember I was a runner when I was in high school. Actually, I started running in junior high school just for fun. And then I started doing track and I kept it going because I played college and soccer. I think it's because I started so young as a habit, and you can start it later. My mom started running in her 40s, and she did her first half marathon when she was 45. And then I can't remember, but she's done several half marathons. So it's never too late. It's not like you have to start super young. But even if I haven't been running in a really long time, if I decide to throw on my running shoes and go for a jog, my body still remembers how to jog. My body still has this comfort of how to jog. Last thing, I want to wrap this one thing up, and then I am going to continue a part two and maybe a part three, because I do want to share more about this particular backpacking trip, because there's a lot I haven't told you about yet. But one other message I would give you, and maybe for you to share with your kids or your friends' kids or people that are younger, is to practice, or not just practice, just go hiking, go walk on a trail that has dirt. And ideally on trails that have roots and they have some rocks, and you have to maneuver and pay attention to uneven ground. And the reason for doing that is because I've experienced and I've witnessed when there are kids that are, or not even just kids, adults, kids who are only used to walking on asphalt. Or let's say you live in the suburbs like I do, and we have something called the Iron Horse Trail. And it's great. You can just keep going. It's like bikes on this side, walkers on this side, dogs. Maybe it's kind of wide, maybe it's narrow, but it's asphalt and it's flat. What can happen there is that you don't develop what's called your vestibular function, strengthen it in the way, in the part of your brain that knows how to balance and knows how to stay upright even when you're on uneven surfaces. And the first time I really noticed this was when we just moved here from Washington State. My daughter was 9 years old. She joined the Girl Scouts. The Girl Scouts had not, this particular troop, they didn't have any plans on doing camping or really any hiking, because they didn't have moms that knew how to or were interested in leading those types of activities. So of course I jumped in, and my daughter was like, when are we going to go camping? When are we going to go hiking? Which is what she associated with the Scouts. But here in the Bay Area, in this town where we lived in, it had a lot to do with selling Girl Scout cookies. It was like, oh, this is interesting, which my daughter ended up being really good at that too. But the outdoorsy thing, that element was not as present at all. So I took a group of girls, and none of the moms wanted to go. They weren't comfortable with it. They didn't either feel safe, or they'd never done it before. And for some reason, they weren't willing to, and they didn't know me very well. So maybe they didn't trust me. I mean, I understand. So I just had a very small group of girls that would go hiking with me that had never been hiking before. And it was interesting observing them and observing my daughter and me, how my daughter and I, we would just walk on the trails. It's like, yeah, okay, there's a root, there's a rock, there's a up, there's a down, and, kind of like walking like mountain goats. It's just like we didn't even really think about it. Whereas some of the other girls I was watching, and they were tripping, and they were having to tentatively just watch where they were going, which was great. It's a great practice of awareness and mindfulness. So I slowed down and I observed, and we kind of made that part of the learning, is like how to walk on uneven ground. And as they kept going, they started to get more comfortable, and their bodies started to get more comfortable, and they're without even telling them, their body naturally knew how to use the inner stabilizing muscles in the legs. The core muscles would get engaged, that needed to get engaged. The part of the brain that needed to be aware is almost getting into this primal experience of stepping and walking, and if you stumble a little bit, just how do you find your balance again? It's this, I don't know, it's kind of like this dance of life. So that's the last piece of suggestion or advice I would leave you, is if that's something that you feel like you or your kids or you personally, if you feel like you don't feel balanced in your life and you don't actually feel grounded, put yourself in situations that you are less grounded, that will force your brain and your body to figure out how to get strengthened. It'll know, the body and the mind, it will figure out, but you just keep doing it until you get to the point that it doesn't feel scary and it doesn't feel awkward to walk on uneven ground. And I'm not saying, like I said, I'll tell you more about the backpacking, but like when we were bouldering, I mean, I had to watch, where do we put our hands? Where do we put our feet? So it wasn't like I'm Spider-Man or Spider-Woman. Like I can just go without paying attention. I still pay attention. But the earlier you will do this and the more you practice it, you're going to develop something different in the body, in the brain, that maybe you've never developed before. It could give you self-confidence, a sense of accomplishment. It can condition muscles in your body that you didn't realize could use some conditioning. And it can also be a lot of fun. All right, there you go. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay tuned. I'll share a little bit more about my backpacking experience, especially because I think it offers some really great lessons about life. Okay, thank you. Connect with me. I have, I think, 2 spots left for my Bali Women's Retreat. I think those are going to go quickly because I've got several people that are interested in those. I still have 1 spot for Costa Brava. It can be booked as a single or a double. That room can be set up with 2 twins or 1 king bed for that. So that's Costa Brava. That's coming up soon, October 20 to 25. Especially if you're already there in Europe, and you have a quick maybe train ride, come on over and meet us in Barcelona, and then we'll go to Costa Brava together. Or join us from the Bay Area and fly with us, and I'll give you the itinerary. And join us for some yoga, meditation, exploring, some hiking. All right, thanks everybody. See the episode notes and how you can connect with me. I'll see you next time. Leave comments, reviews. I would love to hear from you. All right, bye.